Is Misfits Boxing helping boxing or slowly damaging it? That is the debate. Some people see opportunity, entertainment, and innovation. Others see confusion, gimmicks, and declining standards. The question is not whether Misfits is successful. The question is what success is costing. Today, I want to discuss Misfits Boxing, because regardless of whether you love it or whether you hate it, it has become impossible to ignore. It is attracting celebrities, influencers, former athletes, and huge audiences. But is this creating a stronger boxing industry, or is it creating long-term problems for the sport? So let's start with the positives. Let's start there. Misfits has created opportunities, various opportunities. Boxers can earn money and support their families in different lanes. Celebrities now have another competitive outlook. It also, and when I say it, I'm referring to entertainers, influencers. They understand entertainment. Influencers are often excellent marketers because they know how to capture attention. They know how to build narratives and attract audiences. And in many ways, Misfits has brought fresh eyes to boxing and expanded the market. But there is another side to the discussion. There's another side to the coin. Boxing has always been about entertainment, but it's more than entertainment. That is the premise here. It is a craft. It is a skill developed through years of sacrifice and discipline. If the shift focuses too heavily towards entertainment, does the public begin to value the spectacle over the ability? That is a serious question, because credibility is difficult to build, but very easy to lose. Now, when fans, when they watch boxing or when they watch elite boxing, they're watching mastery. They're watching timing, precision, distance control, and high ring IQ. Those details are often invisible to the casual audience. Misfits sometimes places less emphasis, or it does place less emphasis on those qualities and more emphasis on the personalities. But if the personalities become more important than the performance, what message does that send about the sport itself? And this conveniently leads to another question. And that question is, are people entering influencer boxing? Are they entering influencer boxing because they genuinely respect the art form? Or are they simply using boxing as a financial and marketing vehicle? There is nothing wrong with making money. Matter of fact, money is essential in a capitalist society. But boxing has historically rewarded dedication. If financial incentives become the only primary motivation, does the sport slowly lose part of its identity? And this involvement of British rappers is quite interesting. Why are so many rappers entering influencer boxing? Is it because boxing allows them to demonstrate masculinity and toughness outside the music? Or is it simply another avenue for revenue? Is it simply a revenue stream? Perhaps it's a combination of both, as rap in certain forms is particularly masculine, as well as other elements. But the trend raises interesting questions about what people are actually seeking from these events. I think it's important to recognize that marketing has always existed in boxing. Muhammad Ali, for example, understood promotion on a deeper level. Floyd Mayweather understood promotion on a deep level. However, some critics argue that certain Misfits promotions, they're crossing the line. Shock value can generate attention. It does generate attention, but attention alone is not always positive. If marketing becomes increasingly distasteful, controversial, or artificial, there is a risk that the product eventually loses authenticity. And another concern is public perception. New fans may struggle to distinguish between professional boxing and influencer boxing. I think that distinction matters. One involves years of development and elite competition. The other often prioritizes entertainment, accessibility, and marketing. If audiences begin viewing both through the same lens, Professional boxing could face challenges protecting its reputation and protecting its prestige credibility. At the same time, it's important to recognize that capitalism rewards competition, and Misfits has forced traditional boxing promoters to think differently. Competition can create innovation, and innovation is important. It can improve marketing, fighter opportunities, and fan engagement. So from that side of the coin, in that sense, Misfits may actually help boxing evolve. The presence of an alternative platform creates pressure on established organizations to improve their own products. And think of this, the real issue may not be Misfits itself. The issue may be the balance. Entertainment is important because entertainment, that attracts the viewers. But boxing also requires standards, high standards. If entertainment completely overwhelms the craft, credibility, that is going to suffer. If the craft completely ignores entertainment, then audiences suffer. The challenge is finding a balance, finding that balance that protects both commercial success and sporting integrity. So is Misfits destroying the legacy of boxing? I do not think the answer is simple. The answer has context, because Misfits creates jobs, generates revenue, and attracts attention. Those outcomes are positive. But if it is not managed carefully, it could also weaken public understanding of what elite boxing truly represents. The future, therefore, depends on whether entertainment complements the craft or replaces it entirely. So let's put our cards on the table and let's really discuss this. So the first statement is, does Misfits create opportunities, entertainment, and new audiences for boxing? So that's three different things. Let's tackle it. So does Misfits create opportunities? Let's define opportunities. So opportunity here is economic opportunities. So an influencer can sign up for a boxing match and they will get the marketing, the recognition, the attention, but to my understanding, they will also get paid. So yes, it creates new opportunities for influencers, people within the media space, and also potentially for boxers that may have retired, or maybe amateur boxers, or people that may not belong at the highest level of boxing, or people that are past their prime but still want to engage with the entertainment. And that moves to the second point, which is Misfits entertainment. Clearly Misfits is entertainment, and that's, I guess, is its specialty. Influencers know how to market. They understand the importance of attention. So Misfits excels when it comes to entertainment. Not when it comes to mastery of boxing, but when it comes to entertainment, that's where it excels. And clearly, this brings new audiences for boxing. I think it's important to elaborate on the importance of creating opportunities. Creating new economic opportunities is really essential, particularly for people that are in the industry that are struggling. It's a beautiful thing that a boxer who, for whatever reason, can't operate on the highest level, or an influencer that's struggling, it's a great thing when they can find an economic opportunity that can feed them and their family. So I want to really heavily emphasize the importance of that. So the next comment is, boxing risks losing credibility when entertainment outweighs skill. I think there's some truth to this, but it depends on the audience. It's important that boxing fans understand the difference. It's essential that boxing fans understand, and casual boxing fans understand, that there's a clear distinction between Misfits boxing and regular boxing. When I say regular boxing, we're talking about all aspects of boxing, whether it's British level, Commonwealth level, European level, championship level, etc., and the elite level. And generally, I think people can make that distinction. But if people don't make that distinction, then boxing can lose credibility. Also, if Misfits boxing becomes bigger than traditional boxing, and people judge Misfits boxing when they judge boxing, then that becomes a problem. But I don't think there's any implication that that is happening. I could be wrong. I'm not familiar, or I don't know offhand what the exponential growth of Misfits boxing is and how it compares to traditional boxing. Is the entertainment outweighing the skill? Well, it's outweighing the skill within the Misfits domain, but the more important question is that in traditional boxing, is the entertainment outweighing the skill? And I think when you look at the great fighters, Naoya Inoue, Bivol. I think when you look at those fighters, Alexander Usyk, you look at, and of course Terence Crawford has retired, but when you look at the elite level fighters, you think, no. It's the skill that is the central point. Shakur Stevenson, that was the name that I couldn't find. But when you take those fighters and you look at those fighters, you clearly can see that in traditional boxing, it's the skill that's essential. Yes, there's elements of marketing, but it's the skill. But in the Misfits world, it is different. That's not to say that there's no credibility in the Misfits world and that no one is taking it seriously, because clearly there are boxers within Misfits that do take the art seriously. The third statement is personality-driven promotion can overshadow boxing mastery. That's very true, but that can be true in traditional boxing as well. And just because someone is personality-driven doesn't mean that they're not an elite boxer. Let's give an example. Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest, or if not the greatest, personality-driven boxer, but he was also one of the greatest boxers, if not the greatest boxer of all time. So that destroys that premise. Then you've got Floyd Mayweather. He was also personality-driven. He was great at marketing. He was great at creating narratives, but he was also one of the greatest boxers of all time, one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. So that's not always true. Within the Misfits boxing context, personality-driven promotion is essential because it's about attention, it's about clicks. So there is an issue where if things aren't regulated or if the culture is not there, then you can have a problem where the promotion is really good and that's what you expect, but then we need to bring up the boxing IQ, because what you want, you already have a template of elite marketing, but you need to bring up that boxing skill. And certain boxers in Misfits, they are practicing the craft and they're taking the craft seriously. So the next statement is, do some participants, they may view boxing as a business rather than a craft. And again, it's important to make distinctions here. Floyd Mayweather respected the craft, was elite at the craft, but he totally respected the business of boxing. He understood the business of boxing and he excelled at it. So it's about excelling in both. I don't know fully what people at Misfits get paid offhand. I don't know what they get paid. But I understand that Misfits Boxing is a business tool for many. It's a business tool. But what's important, I guess, is to try and create a culture where to be part of this platform, to be part of the Misfits Boxing context, there needs to be an element of boxing credibility, an element of, maybe boxing mastery is too harsh of a word, but you need to respect the boxing fundamentals and you need to be, doing basic things like going through a proper camp, having good trainers and just giving it your all. Because if you're not doing that, and then you're just coming from the paycheck, you're undermining Misfits Boxing, you're undermining boxing itself. And then the next thing, the rise of rappers in boxing raises questions about motivation. I think it's funny here because it's important to realize that hip-hop is multifarious. It talks about various things, whether social deprivation, motivation, things that happen on the street, and political commentary, etc. But also a part of hip-hop is social commentary and also masculinity. And there's a massive masculinity element of hip-hop about being tough. And you can find that in many, many facets of hip-hop. So it's interesting because you would think a rapper, a British rapper or an American rapper going into Misfits, that's a dangerous thing to do. That creates brand risk. So I can only assume that if a rapper takes that risk, that yes, their motivation will be economic, but hopefully because of the brand risk, they will take the art seriously and will be disciplined, because obviously they won't want that viral moment. Well, they'll want the viral moment, but they will want the viral moment to be in their favor. So the next statement is, that certain marketing tactics may attract attention but damage authenticity. I guess you have to take that on a case-by-case basis. What type of marketing are we talking about? I think when the marketing becomes thuggish, I think that can create a brand issue. And if the marketing becomes over-sexualized, then that can affect the brand. Because ultimately, I would, when you think about Misfits Boxing, I guess it depends on the brand. Is it just purely entertainment, or do you want it to be entertainment, but entertainment that has a relationship with good boxing? If you want it to just be entertainment, then maybe it doesn't damage the Misfits brand. It could damage the boxing brand, though. But marketing tactics are essential. They're essential in a capitalist system. But I guess there's a question of, is there a moral question of when you market too much, or you market in a way that is morally bad? And then, or if your marketing affects the credibility of boxing, then should you do that marketing? And who should make that call? It's a very interesting statement. Then we got influencer boxing can blur the line between entertainment and professional sport. I think, yeah, it can blur the line. And I guess the main thing here is that you want people to have economic opportunities. You want people to be able to open doors and be able to feed themselves, feed their families, and have financial opportunities. But you don't want it to compromise the sport either. You don't want it to compromise the elite level of boxing. People need to know their place. There are levels, and I say that respectfully. And I guess the main thing here is entertainers entertain, so they will excel naturally in that area, but also respect the art. And respecting the art, I think part of respecting the art is being in camp and being around the right people that will cultivate the right boxing environment. Next statement, Misfits creates competition that can push boxing to improve. That depends on the premise of whether you think Misfits Boxing is competing with boxing. In a sense, it looks like Misfits Boxing has its own lane. Misfits Boxing is not competing with traditional boxing. However, if Misfits Boxing creates a lane that is more economic than traditional boxing routes, then that can create competition, and that competition can have a variety of different outcomes. So, for example, if there's more money at Misfits Boxing, then that could attract other boxers to Misfits Boxing. I don't think that's true, however. I think traditional boxing still has the majority of the money. People will pay to see Misfits fights. They will pay, but when you've got boxers that have developed their mastery and discipline and have developed a brand over 10, 15 years, people are more invested in those type of mega fights. I don't think there's anything on Misfits that can carry the intensity and the marketing value and the credibility value of an AJ versus Tyson Fury. So the next question is the next statement is the key challenge is balancing entertainment with sporting integrity. Clearly. And then the question is, how do you do that? Does there need to be some type of regulation on training? Do you need to ensure that there's a professional boxing trainer, a professional boxing team? And are there going to be repercussions if people are not taking it seriously? But how do you know if people are not taking it seriously? Do you just develop that culture where it's a culture of, right, if you're in this world, you have to take the boxing seriously. And if you don't, you either A, don't get invited initially, or you don't get invited back. I think it's important for boxing that there's integrity, but also it's probably important for boxing misfits or Misfits Boxing evolution if there's integrity. If it goes down the pure entertainment route, does that negatively impact it? I'm not sure. But if they want to have any credibility to their galaxy, then it's important that the boxers or the entertainers that engage in Misfits Boxing, that they show that dedication, they show that discipline, and that reflects in the actual fights. So I guess you want to see a balance of great entertainment, but some form of technical skill. And when those two worlds come together, that means Misfits Boxing will always be about entertainment, but it will also have a brand and reputation of being serious. So I guess you can do both. You can be great entertainment, but you can also be good in the actual art form. And it'll be interesting to know, what is the intentions of Misfits Boxing? What is their brand? And then the final statement is, can Misfits Can it help or hurt boxing depending on how it evolves? And I guess we've covered that. And I think if it evolves into a freak show, then I think it just takes its own lane. And I'm not sure if people are making that comparison. But if that comparison is being made, if people are looking at them as being side by side, as representing boxing in a professional capacity, then that will become problematic. But clearly, I think people are making that distinction. I'm assuming that the casual fan and the boxing fan makes a distinction between real boxing and Misfits Boxing. However, I think depending on the evolution of Misfits Boxing will determine how we look at Misfits Boxing. And also depending on how much money is generated through the marketing. Because remember, the economic model is not just through the front door, how much you get paid. It's also through the back door, how much attention is generated and how much of that attention you can generate into money, whether that being your YouTube channel, your social media, or the products and services that you sell. If that goes up exponentially, then people will engage in Misfits Boxing. But if they don't engage with discipline, morality, then what you have is a situation that is looked at as like a joke. It's like comedy, as opposed to something is looked at as, yes, this is serious entertainment, but there's also an element of mastery. There's an element of respect. And of course, there is a fundamental element of respect, because when two people come in to box each other, they're putting a lot on the line. So there is a fundamental form of respect. So here's the final point. If you get in the ring, you deserve respect. There's no doubt about that. You deserve an element of respect for that. But will the platform get respect? Because there's a difference between a person getting respect and the platform getting the respect. And whether the platform gets respect will be dependent on the culture that it cultivates. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, then simply like and subscribe and click the hype button. And if you want to watch more content like this, then click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.